Welcome back, everyone, to the weekly Armchair Kickoff podcast. We're on our Manchester United show today, Devil's Advocate, and today I'm joined by a very special guest. I am joined by former Manchester United and former Celtic player, Mr. Lou Macari. How's it going this afternoon, Lou?
Fine, thank you. And you in Dublin, how's things going there?
Yeah, it's very, very well over here now. We were talking just before. The weather over here is beautiful. Been out for a nice walk this morning. It's match day, so all the nerves are kind of generating through me at the moment. But absolutely happy to be speaking to you here this afternoon. And all is good in life at the moment.
Thanks for inviting me.
No problem at all. And so for people who know Mr. Lou Macari, he's former Manchester United and Celtic player. At his time at Celtic, he's won 4 league titles at Celtic. At Manchester United, he's won the second division, the FA Cup and the Charity Shield, and also has been a runner-up in the League Cup and the FA Cup as well during his time at United. Lou, I'd just like to ask you just about your early time at Celtic. Obviously, back when you were playing with Celtic, Scottish football, Celtic and Rangers would have been, the two juggernauts of Scottish football. You had teams kind of like Aberdeen and Hibs and teams like that in the Scottish Premier League. During your time at Celtic, what was it like coming up through Scottish football during that time? And you had a very successful time at Celtic, winning 4 league titles, and you also came through like the academy at a young age there. How did that feel kind of coming through Celtic at that point in time?
Well, going back to those days, I was a Celtic supporter and used to travel on the supporters coach every week from a seaside town where I live called Largs. It's on the west coast of Scotland. And believe it or not, during that time, I never seen Celtic win anything. As a youngster, 10 years of age, didn't see them win anything, going week after week after week, season after season. It was just all about Rangers, and I'm sorry, Celtic weren't in the hunt. And then all of a sudden, Jock Stein came along. This man that obviously has gone down in history as the first British manager to win the European Cup, which he did with Celtic. And he transformed everything. So it ended up for myself, who'd probably been going for 6 or 7 years and never seen them win anything as a youngster, to all of a sudden, I'm going and they're picking up trophies galore. But there was even better to follow for me because I was spotted by a Celtic scout playing one weekend, and he invited me up to Celtic Park. Not to become a Celtic player, nothing to do with, as we do nowadays, an academy, simply invited up to train 2 days a week, Tuesday and Thursday evening after school. And it was for 2 years. So I wasn't offered a contract of any kind, just verbally. They told me, we'd like you to come up for 2 years, 2 nights a week. And then after that, we'll see how it's gone and we'll make a decision whether to take you or not. So I left school every Tuesday and Thursday, jumped on a train to Glasgow, jumped on 2 buses to get to Celtic Park. Bust my gut to get there on time because I found out quite quickly that Jock Stein was a big guy about timekeeping. He wouldn't allow you to be late, no matter whether you come from Hong Kong or from somewhere else, which I was coming from, no lateness about it. So did that for 2 years. And during that 2-year period, I got stronger and I got quicker with the help of the Celtic. Well, I was going to say the Celtic people, but there was only 3 people there at the time that ran the football club. One was the manager, Jock Stein. Second was Sean Fallon from Ireland, shot a Cork. He was a Cork man. He was my reserve team manager when I got in the reserves. And the other was a physiotherapist. That was the total number of people that controlled Celtic at the time. There was no staff of 200 or 300 or 400. That was it. So trained for 2 nights, and after 2 years, the big night arrived where they were going to call me into the office and tell me yes or no. And I remember it as though it was yesterday because I was shaking, because going from that Celtic supporter on the supporters bus, I was within touching distance of becoming a Celtic player, which was beyond my wildest dreams. If it all went right, I was going to be looking after their boots, the shorts, the strips, cleaning their boots, cleaning all their equipment. I was going to be cleaning Celtic Park after after a match, because you went on to actually the ground staff, it was called back then. Nothing fancy about it. No academy, ground staff, work and more work, to be honest with you. And went into the office and Jock was there and he said to me, right, we've been impressed with your progress. You've gone from a little boy to now a little man. We'd like to develop you even more into a Celtic footballer. And I said, well, Mr. Steiner, I've followed the team and I've seen the Lisbon Lions. I'm now cleaning their boots. They went to Lisbon and, won the European Cup. Do you really believe that I can get in that team eventually? And he said, you wouldn't be here and we wouldn't be offering you the chance of doing that if we didn't think you could do it. So that gave me, as you can imagine, a massive lift. And somebody telling me that I can equal one of, I can get in the Celtic team that's been the best Celtic team of all time, that's won the European Cup, and capable of going and winning it again. So I joined Celtic then and did what I had to do on the ground staff with Kenny Dalglish, Danny McGrain and one or two other youngsters. And we looked after the first team players, but at the same time in the afternoon, we were allowed to go out and train at Celtic Park. We were allowed to go out on the pitch, which massive for me.
At that point, you must have been living the dream. At that point, like you grew up like supporting Celtic. You see the Lisbon Lions, and then all of a sudden you're now at the club you supported all your life. I'd say you were in disbelief at that moment.
I did disbelieve it because when you're on a supporters coach going to the games every week, it's never in your wildest dreams that one day that you can become part of it. But it happened, and then I had to make the most of it. And with the help of Jock Stein and with the help of Sean Fallon in particular, I probably wouldn't have made it without their support and help, because I was quite frail. I was slim build. Kenny Dalglish was the same as me. He was quite slim, and with their help and their guidance, we both went to England. I went to Manchester United. Kenny went to Liverpool, and down to the magic of Jock Stein. No magic there in terms of systems, formations, or any of that you hear about nowadays. It was about hard work, discipline, dedication. Do you want it badly enough? Are you committed to the football club? Are you going to do this? And that was their style of management, a bit like an Alex Ferguson in later years, because that's what Sir Alex was all about. Worked with Jock Stein, so it must have rubbed off on Sir Alex how Scotland's greatest ever manager operated. And I became a Celtic player, and before I know it, I'm going to Ibrox. I'm at Celtic Park. I'm in the tunnel at Celtic Park. I won a Scottish Cup medal when I didn't even consider I'd be playing, because the manager just picks the team an hour from kick-off, and all of a sudden he picked me in the Scottish Cup final against Rangers. Couldn't believe it.
That's a baptism of fire.
A baptism of fire. 128,000 people at Hampden Park. And I scored a goal. We won the cup, got a Scottish Cup winners medal. There were crazy days, but there were days, as you can imagine, I'll never, ever forget. You couldn't forget it.
Yeah, and I think like when you're any footballer growing up, and if you play for your boyhood club, there's no kind of better feeling than that. Like you see footballers, eventually they may go on and have a great career, but they never get the opportunity to, let's say, play for their boyhood team. Like especially if you're living in a country like Ireland or Scotland. Like Scotland, it's mainly Celtic, Rangers be the biggest clubs. Like if you're living in Ireland, your dream is Manchester United or Liverpool. And to see kind of when players go through that transition and playing for their boyhood club and they're kind of a one club man, or let's say they play for the kind of traditional clubs, it's always great to see. And kind of like looking at your time.
Just leading on to that, I intended to stay there all my life, but I started on £50. I started on £12.50 a week, along with Kenny Dalglish, being on the ground staff. When I went into the first team, that went up to £50. And I'd been in the first team a few years and thought I should get an increase, a bit of a rise. Yeah. And they offered me £5 rise. And my circumstances at home had changed. I was now married. I'd lost my father, so to support my mother, And I told Jock saying that I needed a bit more money to stay because my circumstances had changed. And he said, well, that's the offer and that's the offer. So I plucked up the courage. I don't know how I plucked up the courage to say, right, I need to go to England. I need to play in England to get decent wages. No idea if anybody thought I was any good. No idea how it worked, how you went from Celtic to England. And or I would probably have been a Celtic player all my life because that was my team. No idea who was going to make any sort of move for me. And just happened one night, Jockstein rang me at home and said, be ready in the morning, there's a car coming to pick you up. You're going to England. And he put the phone down and he never told me where I was going. So I got off the phone, my wife said, who was that? I said, well, it was the manager and I'm going to England tomorrow. And she said, where are you going? I said, I've no idea. Car's coming to pick me up and they're going to take me to England. So she thought I was crazy because I didn't ask him where I was going, but he was the boss. He was the man that everyone feared, and you didn't spend any great time with him. But anyway, the car came, I got in the car, headed for England, passed all the signposts that I wanted to pass, like Blackpool and Carlisle. I was quite happy to go past there because with relief I then knew I wasn't going to Carlisle or Blackpool. But then we turned off for Southport, which completely threw me. And they had no team in the league then, but it was only a quick stop at a hotel in Southport. And then moving on to, believe it or not, Anfield. And unbeknown to me, Bill Shankly had asked Jockstein if ever I was leaving Celtic, he wanted to sign me at Liverpool. So for an autumn at Anfield, I'm in his office, contracts offered to me. There's a game on that night against Burnley. Liverpool are playing Burnley in an FA Cup replay. Got up to my seat in the director's box, and the director's box was packed apart from one seat next to me, which was filled right on kick-off by Paddy Crerand, who at the time was Manchester United assistant manager.
Yeah.
Had Paddy not been at the game that night, I would have signed for Liverpool, not knowing that anybody else was interested in me, because Paddy said, why didn't anybody ring us to tell us at Old Trafford that you were available? And I said, well, I don't know. No agents at the time, nobody had an agent. And he said, well, we'll sign you. And I said, well, how? I don't know, Pat, you're not the manager, you're the assistant manager. So he went away at half-time to phone Tommy Dock, who was a manager. Tommy Dock told him to tell me not to sign for Liverpool. And I spent an uncomfortable 45 minutes watching the second half, not knowing what was going to happen at the end of the game, because I had to go into Bill Shankly and do the signing. But when Paddy told me United wanted me to play for them, I've got to be honest, with the Best, Law, Charlton and the players that were at Old Trafford, I had no hesitation. I was going to sign for Manchester United, and the only problem I had was going to tell Bill Shankly that I wasn't going to sign for Liverpool, which I did do eventually. It wasn't that night. It wasn't the day after. It wasn't the day after that. It was when he knew that I'd gone to Manchester United and actually signed for them. And just picked up the phone and apologised to him and just said that I didn't know anything about the transfers. I didn't know how they happened, and I was taken down by car, and I would have been a Liverpool player because I didn't know there was anybody else interested in me. But given the opportunity of Manchester United or Liverpool, a successful Liverpool, I've got to say, and an unsuccessful Manchester United, but I just felt the right place for me was Old Trafford, in amongst the three people in particular I mentioned, George Best, Dennis Law and Sir Bobby Charlton. The sort of the attachment with Manchester United and the attachment with them three in particular, I had to head for Old Trafford, which I did do, and was there 11 years. And people ask me, do you think I made a mistake? And I say no, regardless of what Liverpool won and what we won. It was 11 great years, and 11 great years. If I'd have missed it, I would have made the wrong decision. If I'd gone to Liverpool and not gone to Old Trafford for those 11 years, it would have definitely been the wrong decision, but I made the right decision.
Yeah, and it's crazy, that story, because like Liverpool at that time under Bill Shankly, they were winning almost everything,
Everything.
European cups,
Yeah.
the English league at the time, and they're a very successful team. But it's kind of what that mirrors, that situation is like everything happens for a reason. Like Paddy Crernard sits down beside
Yeah.
you, and
Yeah.
lo and behold, you sign for Manchester United, and the rest is
And
history.
if you know, you'll know this yourself. Over the 11 years I was there, Liverpool won more than obviously we did. But still, when you travel around the world, people weren't talking about Liverpool. Wherever you went in the world, they were talking about Manchester United. They were talking about Bobby Charlton, not only with Manchester United, but with England. They were talking about George Best, in my opinion, the best Manchester United player there's ever been. And I think most of the ex-players that either played with George, which I did for a short period, or trained with him, which I did for a short period, will tell you that that was a general opinion. George was brilliant. Not far behind was Sir Bobby, and not far behind was Dennis, or whatever you want to change it around. But those three in particular were known and respected worldwide, and so was Manchester United.
And just to touch on George Best, like he's obviously right up there, the greatest ever Manchester United players of all time, and he has such a great legacy as a footballer. What was it like training with George Best and playing alongside George Best? Like he had an aura, he had quality, he could turn a game on the blink of an eye. Like what was it like being around that man?
He had it all. He had everything. He had the ability to beat people. He had the ability to ride a tackle when tackling was allowed back then, and people were tough and rough. He could score goals, as we've seen on many occasions. Not just beating 4 or 5 people then scoring, but he could score all types of goals. He was strong. He was brave. He was a good guy. He was a nice guy. So George had everything, and the sad thing about George passing away so soon in his life is that a lot of people have got the wrong idea about George Best. George Best, as a professional footballer at Manchester United, was your ideal player, was your ideal character. He had everything about him. People remember later on in his life when things went wrong, when he left Old Trafford and he started drinking. At Old Trafford, he wasn't a big drinker. George was a shandy man at the very worst. But because of his career going downhill rapid after he left Old Trafford, he went to America, and he went to America at a time when American football was nothing, not like it is now. It's a reasonable standard now. You went to America for a final payday, and George did that. So he got a little bit misinterpreted what George was all about and when his problems started. But at Manchester United as a player, and I probably think that you speak to most players that played with him, they'll tell you he was a genius. Geniuses don't come along every year. He was a genius. He was an unbelievable player.
Like anytime I watch highlights or interviews about George Best, like everyone speaks so highly about him, and like I wish I was alive back then though to see him, because obviously when Cristiano was at our club, like though he was obviously another all-time great that we had at the club, and people used to align him as a modern day George Best. But I wish I could actually seen him though, like live in the flesh, because obviously he's a great at this football club, and he's someone who epitomizes what Manchester United is all about.
Without a doubt. And you just mentioned Cristiano there, and no disrespect to Cristiano, brilliant player, but not in the same league as George Best. If anybody asked me that question, which I've been asked a lot of times over the years at Old Trafford, when I've been doing the television, Cristiano Ronaldo, who was brilliant, who we all sat there and admired, but still wasn't as good as George Best. There was nobody as good as George.
Yeah, he was quality, and again the fact he comes from like Northern Ireland, over this side of the pond, is it's great to see obviously a player come from our side of the world, because we do, I suppose, when you look at both our national teams over this side of the pond, we have developed good players, but it's like him, Roy Keane, all these players top level from this side of the world.
Without a doubt, and you're doing your country a disservice there a little bit, because those players that came when I started in '73, that came from the Republic, that came from Northern Ireland,
yeah,
they were brilliant. Big Paul, I got on great with Big Paul. I love Big Paul. He was a gentleman, still is a gentleman. Paul
Kevin
McGrath
Moran.
was Kevin Moran. He come over. Kevin was everything you'd want in a Manchester United player, a bit like Big Paul, rock solid, dedicated, desperate to win. Jerry Daly come over. He was the exact same with Ashley Grimes. And they all get in the team. And they all get in the team when Scottish players, Irish players, and Welsh players was the makeup of Manchester United for years and years and years. And it's maybe one of the reasons why recent teams haven't been as consistent, in my opinion, simply because the foreign players that we've got sometimes before a big game like Sunday, and it's Liverpool, don't need to tell me or any lad from the Republic of Ireland or Northern Ireland what that's all about. But you might have to try and, over a period of 2 or 3 weeks before the game, tell some lad who's come from wherever he's come from what that fixture's all about. And even after telling him, I don't think it registers the way it did back then, because all the players that came there, we all knew. I'd brought up at Celtic, so I knew Celtic, Rangers, and I knew about Liverpool, Manchester United. So when I got there and match day came, I knew what it meant to everybody. I knew it was a must-win game.
Yeah, I think like when you look at the traditions of them rivalries, I think, as you said, people from kind of like the British Isles, Ireland, Northern Ireland, they'd know what these games mean. Like, obviously, people come from overseas. If let's say they're not a Manchester United fan as such, they won't know as much as what someone who's connected to the club would.
No, and back then, to give you an example, 11 years there I only played with 2 foreign players. 3 maybe, if you want to call it 3. Do you want to leave that for a quiz question for yourselves or anything? But I played with 3 foreign players in 11 years. So that shows you there was never a great need for foreign players. Nobody took them in. When we played Liverpool in the FA Cup final in '77, I'm not so sure if there was a foreign player on the pitch. I haven't checked before I come on here. I should have. But there wouldn't have been more than one in the 2 teams. Liverpool at the time was just full of British players. But I'll tell you the 3 I played with over 11 years. Everyone would probably get to. But the third one, I'm not so sure they get. Anyway, one was Gary Bailey, who went on to play for England. So I'm not so sure you could call him a foreign player, but he was from South Africa. So, yeah, foreign player to start with. Arnold Muren, who was brilliant for Manchester United, he was as well. He was definitely foreign. And the other one was a Yugoslav lad called Nikolai Jovanovic. Played 4 or 5 games and then he went back to Yugoslavia. It was called Yugoslavia then, not what it is now. It's all split up. So there was no great need back in the 70s and early 80s for foreign players. I mean, and United and Liverpool and all those clubs didn't really go looking for them. If they found an exceptional one like Arnold Muren, you were duty bound to go and get him because he was a top player. But that's all changed nowadays, and there's hardly a British player in most of the teams nowadays.
Yeah, if you look at the top 6 in the Premier League at the moment in terms of like British Irish players, in terms of you go starting 11s, there's not many at all when you think about it.
Not many at all. So that's a big change in the game, and there's been other changes since those days. But the thing that should never change, and I don't need to tell you for Manchester United, is style of football, attacking football. Doing what they've done sometimes this year, going behind and coming back and winning the game. That's all connected with Manchester United teams of the past. Getting to FA Cup finals, that's Manchester United. If we'd had our way, or certain people had their way last week, you wouldn't have been at many more FA Cup finals when the new format was trying to be pushed through without anybody aware of it. There wouldn't have been many FA Cup finals, and certainly the lead up to an FA Cup final, that's all changed anyway, because no one pays any attention to it. No one's really interested. They change the team, everybody changes the team around. Whereas, back in 70s, 80s, FA Cup was the main thing. Packed Wembley, 100,000 people, everyone coming over from Ireland and Northern Ireland and making a big weekend of it. So for that reason alone, I'm delighted the new thing that they tried to push through has gone. It won't reappear again, because the FA Cup would have gone, and certainly the Carabao Cup, which City have just won for the 4th time, that would have gone as well, for definite.
Yeah, and I think, I think one thing that was important when the Super League kind of fell is that the tradition of English football was maintained. I think that was a massively important thing. Like, I've been to an FA Cup final, albeit we didn't win the game. It was against Chelsea in 2018, and we didn't win the game, but the overall occasion was special. Like, you could feel the kind of the passion and the aura kind of around that. Like, it was a very big occasion. As you said, you'd make a weekend out of it as well. I remember I travelled from Ireland on the Thursday, didn't come home till Monday. You know, like, it was one of them. Like, it was just a great occasion. But you touched on Manchester United this season. Obviously, today we have a massive game against Roma in the semi-finals of the Europa League. It's our 5th semi-final in 2 years. And before we touch on that game, I'd just like to ask you just about the progress of the current squad this season. We've improved, obviously, as of Sunday. We've improved on last season's third place points tally. We're on 67 points now. Overall, under Ollie, we were second in the league now, and we've picked up quite a good few results this season. Now, you touched on kind of us going behind in multiple games this season, and we've had a fantastic away record, and we've overall, like, we've seen progress from the last kind of 2 seasons under Solskjaer. What would you make of our progress this season?
Every manager that's followed Sir Alex, I was always of the opinion, starting from David Moyes, it's mission impossible. You're not going to achieve what our greatest manager, along with Sir Matt Busby at Old Trafford, did in the time he was there. So, and it's followed on because manager after that, Louis van Gaal, didn't happen for him. Jose, didn't happen for him, when everyone thought that Jose was a certainty. He did deliver in terms of a trophy or two, but in the end, he's ended up leaving Old Trafford. So it didn't happen for him. And I always felt that it wouldn't happen for those managers, because anybody that's been there during the good times of Sir Alex remembers the results, and it was result after result. It was trophy after trophy. It was mostly winning all the time, brushing aside all teams in front of them. You had the class of 92, you had Roy Keane, you had others there to help those youngsters along. So it was win, win, win. And when it's like that, the win-win-win's got to come to an end. But Ollie's got to go and win something. I hope it's this competition, this trophy, because all Manchester United managers have got to win something sooner or later. Been here a couple of years, things have improved under him, but he's still got to go and do it in a competition. He's got to go and win those games. He's got to get to the final, and for everyone to experience that final, and then win the competition itself. He's a good guy, Ollie. He's a good guy, but in management, as we all know nowadays, it doesn't really matter if you're a good guy or not. If the owners feel that your time's up and you haven't delivered, your time's up. But I'm really, really hoping that they can get a good result tonight, which gets them halfway to the final, and then another good result next week, which gets them to the final, and that Ollie does win something. Because the continual pressure as well from supporters, and it's to be expected. There's nothing wrong with that. Everyone's got their opinion, but the continual pressure of being the Manchester United manager is difficult for most people, and I wouldn't like to see Ollie fail. I wouldn't like to see him leave Old Trafford without winning something. So I'm really desperate, and everyone should be really desperate to see him win things. If everyone's got their own favourite, like somebody else from abroad in Europe or another manager from this country, there's nothing wrong with that. But I know Ollie, and I've been in his company, and I've been around him, and I was there in '99 when it all happened for us. But I still, at the same time, I do realise that for him to survive, he's got to win something.
Yeah, I think, like, when we look at the past 2.5 years of Ollie's tenure at United, Like he came in, he steadied the ship after when Mourinho came in. Then the season after, he finished third. He cleared out a lot of players who weren't good enough to play for the football club. He's starting to get his own players in. Obviously, this season we look like we're destined to finish second. And obviously, the Europa League is within touching distance almost. I think you're right. Like when you look at this springboard for future success, I think this Europa League is very, very important in terms of giving some of these younger players that we have kind of a thirst for trophies. Because one time I'd like to look back to is 2006. Sir Alex was doing the rebuild in 2006. Obviously, he integrated like the likes of Rooney and Ronaldo into the team. Nemanja Vidic was recently have to come to the club, Patrice Evra, and like obviously the likes of Roy Keane left the club at that time. And we won the 2006 League Cup, and that was the start of obviously us winning 3 leagues in a row. We went on to win the Champions League, and it started off another kind of rebuild. And there was a lot of players in that squad at that time, barred likes of Gig Scholes at that time. Didn't win much trophies. Fergie was after building kind of a younger team. I kind of like this situation now. There's a lot of young players in this team. There's a lot of players who have won a couple of trophies. You have your De Gea's, you have your Matas. Obviously, Rashford won the Europa League back in 2016, and obviously, 2017, and the FA Cup as well. Like you look at this squad, you have like McTominay, you have Greenwood, Bruno Fernandes at the football club. He's a fantastic player, but he hasn't won trophies at the top level yet. I believe we win this Europa League, it can actually provide us with a springboard to be hungry for future success, develop that winning mentality, because I think that's very, very important when you're playing for Manchester United and you're wearing that shirt and you're wearing this badge that's there now. You need to be a winner. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. But again, I think that's where things have changed as well, that the players from whatever era you want to go back to, there's a little bit more about them than the lads we've got at the moment are young, they're inexperienced. The players, there's a different approach from players back then. Take Roy Keane, for example. No matter what we've got in that team at the moment, is there a Roy Keane? No chance. There's no Roy Keane there. Is there somebody else equivalent to one of the great players we had from the 90s? Is there a Brian Robson there? No, I don't really think so. And it's not just at Old Trafford. I think that's everywhere. You know, every football club in the country, I think, has got the same problem. How have Liverpool gone from being the team they were and now 12 months later, whatever, looking nothing like the team that they were a year ago? It's the inconsistency that comes with sort of younger players probably because they haven't been given the time to mature. And it's the inconsistency that comes with people with a different mentality. If you've got that consistency, if you look back in history of Manchester United and Liverpool, it's come through those experienced players who have been there, done it. They go and do it again because they like doing it again. Hopefully, when we get another bunch of players that come in, bunch we've got at the moment, have got the makings of being able to do it. But if they didn't do it consistently, it wouldn't surprise me because they are, I'm looking for the right words to use to describe them. They are younger,
inexperienced,
less experienced than the teams in the past. But of course, they've got to play to get that experience. But playing in the past, when players got that experience, they then delivered. I need to see the present day players or the players even in years to come being incapable and not only capable, but actually doing it. And I think that inconsistency is shining through with all the teams in the Premier League. Whereas years ago, you got a team, when they went out, you knew that you were going to get from them. Excuse me, and they delivered. So I'm hoping this team can win something and then go on and deliver again and again and again. That remains to be seen.
And touching on this team, last season we brought in Bruno Fernandes. So I'd like to touch on him for a moment because he's been a revelation since he's come into this football club. His contribution, his mentality, his overall performances in games has been just refreshing to see kind of a player coming in from a different league and kind of the way he's adjusted in kind of short space and time. What are your thoughts on his overall impact on Manchester United since he's signed for the club?
If he hadn't come here and if he hadn't signed for us, I couldn't see us finishing second. I don't think we'd maybe be in the position in this cup competition that we are. He came in, he was a breath of fresh air. He ran around, he got forward. He liked to have a shot at goals, which was something the team wasn't doing regular. People were taking the easy option out, but he came in and every chance he got of a sight of goals. And I don't know his goal tally, but it's okay what he's done since he's come in.
He's 16 in the league this season.
16. It's brilliant. You get 16 goals from midfield. It helps you achieve all those things you're trying to achieve. So without a doubt, best signing this year. Without a doubt, he's player of the season. Maybe touch and go with him and Jesse Lingard, who's player of the season.
Yeah, he's doing very well at West Ham at the
moment. He's been a shock as well. He's shocked everybody, but that's great to see a player who's out of contention, not doing any good at the time, not in the team, getting a new bit of life somewhere else, and hopefully if he comes back to Manchester United, he can keep going and achieve that for Manchester United. But going back to Bruno, that's exactly what he's done. He's come in, he's got off the plane, looks as if he's got off the plane, went and bought a house, settled in, went out on the pitch, played a few games, started scoring goals, kept scoring goals. And without it, we'd have certainly wouldn't be in the position we're in at the moment.
And he's when I look at certain Manchester United players, I always find a connection with a player who I can say that's a Man United player. Within his first couple of games, I looked at him and said, that's a Manchester United player. That's someone who knows what this club is about. And I thought that after about 3, 4, 5 games. I could say he's going to be good. He's going to be a fantastic signing. And I look at him every time and I look at that mentality and that's what we've been missing the last couple of years.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. From midfield, the contribution from any midfield player. We've had lots of great midfield players in the past, but again, I think David Beckham and Scholes, and let's say put Ryan Giggs in that midfield area, and Nicky Butt and them. I think they made it very difficult for a lot of players coming to the club because their performances week after week were brilliant. Didn't make it difficult for you, Roy Keanes or people like that. It certainly made it difficult for you, maybe a player or two that was unknown to you. Even some of them that are known to you now, Scott McTominay, who's a good player for us. But if you look back at those youngsters, they set a sort of level that any Manchester United supporter was probably, like yourself, was probably looking for in a new player's performance. But it wasn't that easy to perform like David Beckham and Ryan Giggs and Scholes and all those players and even the two Neville brothers. That bunch of players were an exceptional bunch of players, and to get a bunch coming in after, which we haven't had, was almost going to be impossible. It was probably never going to happen that you were going to get so many youngsters all making it and all going into the team and all staying in the team, because every football club, 1 or 2 come through, 3 or 4 at the most probably. But under Sir Alex, that bunch that I've just mentioned came through, got in the team, deserved to be in the team, and were the sort of backbone of the team for a number of years.
And when you look at the class of '92, I don't think I look at the current 23s in the academy now. I think there's a lot of good crop of young talent. You look at the likes of Shola Shortire, Hannibal, obviously Amad Diallo is in there. So there's players like that who are coming through and they're all playing well. Do you see anyone from maybe the 23s maybe breaking the first team next season?
Oh, there's always a chance somebody can, from the 23s or even the youth team, can spring to life and catch the manager's eye, and he thinks, well, yeah, he can do it. Mason Greenwood, when he came into the team, people were saying Mason Greenwood, well, that's the lad that plays in the under 18s or the under 19s. But when he said his opportunity, you can see that the lad knows how to score goals. He knows how to score goals. Get him in that box, keep him in the penalty box. He'll get you a fair number of goals a season. So there's a lad there that's capable of doing it. But will there be 7, 8, 9 or whatever, 10 of that class of 92, whatever the numbers were, they eventually came through and did it? Will it ever happen again? Probably not. I was at Celtic with... they called myself, Kenny Dalglish, Danny McGrain, George Conley, 3 or 4 other lads. They called us the Quality Street Gang. Don't really know why they called us a quality street gang. Whether it was a compliment or whether it's something derogatory. But since then, that was early 70s. There's been no quality street gang at Celtic Park. And in the future years to come, I hope there is.
Yeah.
But I probably don't think there will be. I don't think there'll be another class of 92 at Old Trafford. Because the guys that were handling us, Jockstein to start with me, Sir Alex at Old Trafford, these managers were exceptional managers. They were clever managers who developed these players by frightening us, if you want to say that. We were terrified of them. David Beckham was probably terrified of Sir Alex, and everybody was terrified of Sir Alex. Even Roy Keane was probably terrified of him. And these two in particular managed to develop players who not only did we play for our clubs and play a long time, but we were there every week, fit, ready to go. Fitness levels were good because we were taught that at Celtic Park and Old Trafford as well. So now what happens with Celtic players and Manchester United players, a lot of them go out on loan to learn their apprenticeship. We learned it with the players at Celtic Park and at Manchester United.
Yeah, and I think when you look at Manchester United's academy, I think Carrington, even though let's say a few of them don't break the first team, you still see a lot of quality come out of there, and they do well at other clubs. So I think the club, especially United, they have such a rich tradition and history of breaking out players from that academy. And look, I've seen it firsthand. I was over in England in 2015 at the Nottingham Cup, and seen playing against Manchester United's youth team, and that team, I see at youth level here in Ireland, I've never seen anything like I did that week when I was over in Nottingham, to see kind of the standard of what United's youth team was like. So I can absolutely understand, it's probably hard to break in kind of first team level. You probably have to be special. But even still, even if you don't make first team level and you make a Premier League or still Championship level coming out from Carrington, that shows again the quality that the football club do produce in terms of youth.
Yeah. And there's been a lot of Manchester United players over the years have had reputations, and they've come to Old Trafford. And the one that springs to mind right away is Gary Bartels, who was at Nottingham Forest, scored lots of goals for them. So Manchester United decided to sign him. He came to Old Trafford and he couldn't handle it, which is another part of being part of Manchester United. When you do get your opportunity and you're standing in that tunnel, and there's, going back in time, 60,000 in the stadium, but let's go to today's game. There's 75,000 people in that stadium, and you've got to handle that, and you've got no experience because you come from a smaller club like Nottingham Forest or wherever it be, some Derby County. You've got to be able to cope with that and handle it. And there's some players just can't do it. But again, that's clever management. Not only got myself and Dalglish and players at Manchester United at the time ready for it. It was clever management that realised that was part of the game. And standing in that tunnel, week in, week out, can be a very, very intimidating thing if you're not used to it. It can be nerve-wracking. You can hear the crowd. You can hear that 75,000, or if it's Wembley, 100,000, or if it's Hampden Park, 128,000 people. You've got to cope with all that, and it's another part of your education at a football club.
Yeah, again, levels and mentality is what's really important. You have to have the desire to kind of make it at the top level. And just touching on kind of another U academy player, Marcus Rashford. He's shown continuous improvement every season since he's come in to the first team. At the moment, at the age of 23, he's on 87 goals. Wayne Rooney at the moment is obviously the all-time top goal scorer at the football club with 253. With the way Rashford's going, the way his trajectory is going in terms of his career, do you maybe think he has a chance of breaking that record?
He's got a chance of breaking all records, I think. And it was. I can remember this particular event happening because I was working for MUTV. I think it was one Thursday night, and the reserve team were playing. I stand to be corrected, but I think it was Reading, and first team had a few injuries, and they took Marcus Rashford off after about 80 minutes. And word got back to us in the TV gantry that they were keeping him ready because somebody that day who was a centre forward had got injured. Martial, was it Martial?
Yeah, he got injured for the Midtjylland game, yeah.
That's right. So he's elevated into substitute for the first team because of numbers. Certainly wasn't because of the way he played against Reading, because he had a bit of a stinker, actually. He didn't play very good. And we were saying, God, that's a bit of a break for the kid. And so he got the break. He was on the bench, and the player got injured. And before he knows it, he's playing. And he's never looked back since then. But the point I'm trying to make is that if you were at the reserve game 2 nights earlier and watched him play, you wouldn't have considered him for your first team. He didn't do anything. Nothing happened in the 80 minutes that he played that as a spectator or as a scout, you'd have looked at him and said, that kid's got to go in the first team. He was never on the verge of the first team, but got his opportunity through a lack of numbers, took that opportunity. And let's be honest, he has never, ever looked back. He's never looked back. It's happened for him. He was a centre forward in the reserves that Thursday night. He's played most of his games, well, at the start of his career at Manchester United, wide on the left, or at times wide on the right, especially wide on the left. People saying, like myself, well, he's not going to make a career out of wide on the left, because it's one of those awkward positions where, unless you're left-footed, there's not many people can handle it. There's not many people can do it. But he's gone in there, he's gone wide on the left, he's scored goals from there, he's scored goals through the middle, he's done what he's done, he's got that record that you're talking about, he's taken a bit of time off to help charity and to help children. So again, all credit to him, and long may it continue, that everything that happens to him does continue for a number of years, because it's been a great story.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think when you look at what he's doing off the pitch, he's such an example for what footballers should do in terms of using their platform for good. I think looking at what he's done in the UK, it's not short remarkable. I have someone my aunt's partner would be in part of Irish government, and I was talking to him because he's a Celtic and United fan, and he's like, what Marcus Rashford's done in terms of helping change UK government policy is nothing short of remarkable. To see a football player do that and use his platform good, I think is nothing short of remarkable.
Well, he'll have a little team of people round about him that know a bit more about what he's involved in than probably Marcus does. But then he's stuck his name in there. He's put himself to the forefront, and as I say, all credit to him. Not just football now, but he's shown us that he can. And a lot of footballers can do it. They can play their part in society with doing other things. So well done, Marcus.
Yeah, absolutely. Lou, I have a couple of questions for you from our podcast regulars who come on here and they are Manchester United fans. So I have a couple of questions for you. First one comes from Shane Dowley, who's a Manchester United fan. He says, if you could pick one past Manchester United player to play in this current team, who would it be?
Oh, it would definitely.
From which you played with, sorry. From which you played with.
From which I played with?
Yeah.
Oh, I could pick, and I'll stick to Republic of Ireland, because I could pick Paul McGrath, no problem.
Yeah.
He'd stroll through it. I could pick Kevin, he'd stroll through it. I'm trying to think. Brian Robson, stroll through it. He's not obviously from the Republic, but Brian he would stroll through it. Most of the players that played back then could cope with the modern game, no problem whatsoever, because they bring a bit of aggression to the game. They bring everything to the game. So I would be able to probably name most of my teammates, I've got to say, would come through and would play in the team.
Look, there's a lot of players back then. Obviously, your Robsons, your Bruces, Paul McGrath, Kevin Moran. There's a lot of players that would definitely add something to this Manchester United team without a shadow of a doubt.
Well, they would, because it was tougher. tougher in terms of facilities. The opposition, I've got to be honest with you, is tougher than a lot of the teams nowadays. The football, it's the 90 minutes itself was 90 minutes of battling against people, tackling, plenty of tackles, plenty of physical stuff about the game. So you had to cope with all that as well. Yeah, my teammates and the team and players after that would have coped with today's game, no problem.
In terms of the teams you've played with, we have a curveball thrown here. Greg asked the question in the opposite way. He says, which player from United's current team now would best fit the moulds in the team you've played in at this football club?
Well, you had to be strong. You had to be physical. There was no time for whinging. There was no time for complaining about anything, because if you get knocked to the ground, the first thing your teammates would tell you, not the opposition. If you get knocked to the ground, your teammates would tell you, get up quickly. And you had to get up quickly. You had to be fully committed. So who out of the present lot do I think would be able to handle it? Well, somebody like a Harry Maguire would go into the team, and his presence would be there for all to see. He'd be able to handle it. That wouldn't have been a problem for him going back in time. It might have been a problem for a lot of the lads nowadays, because the game is completely different. Not just one or two things changed. More or less everything's changed about it. So I'd probably stick to Harry Maguire being a safe bet to be able to handle the football back then.
He's a very strong centre-back. He's very good in the air as well. And one thing he does very well, I think that flies under the radar, is he actually steps out with the ball a lot out of the back four, and he's comfortable. And he does kind of start attacks, which I think flies under the radar really. So I definitely agree with that one. We have a question in here from Jamie Mackay, who is also a Manchester United fan. He says, what areas do you feel like in the squad in the summer Ollie should look to strengthen?
Well, Ollie works with the players every day. He'll have in his own mind an idea where he wants to strengthen. What's difficult for Jamie, and even for myself, I go down to Carrington every so often. But if you're not there every day, you don't really get to know any player inside out. But when you're the manager, and if he was on now, he could probably give Jamie a better idea of where he's going to find players, because of it's his opinion. He's got the coaching staff round about him. But at the end of the day, he is the manager. He lives and dies by his decisions who he's going to sign. But any team, it looks nowadays that any team, because of the inconsistency, any team could do with strengthening. And if you've got certain areas of your team that you think you're even reasonably well off there, then it probably pays to strengthen, because you've got lots of players nowadays compared to the past that get injured, lots of them that get suspended, lots of them that maybe other things happen to them in their everyday life. Whereas, players were there was a lot of players ever present back in time, because you had to be in the team to get the bonus. You had to be in the team to get appearance money. There seems to be more players required nowadays, rather than back in my time when there was 11 that started. There was one sub back then, which everyone's probably forgotten as well. There was only one player privileged to be able to sit on the bench and be part of the team that day, or the team of 12. Now it's a team of 17, 18. Goodness knows where we're going eventually. There's lots of subs on the bench now. But still, you need, and especially if you don't win anything, the fans, and Jamie might be one of them, the fans will be screaming out for new players to come in. And quite rightly so. If you don't win anything, and it's been a while since you've won things, then you've got to get some new faces in.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think when you look at anything, whether it's successful or not, there's always room for improvement. I think that's what Sir Alex done fantastically well. He's like, when he knew there was time to move a player on, or knew to spice things up, he always done that very well. So I think regardless if you're successful or not, I think there's always room to maybe spice it up if that's the best way to say it.
competition for places. It's fantastic. If you've got that in your team, you'll probably have a winning team.
Absolutely. We've actually a question from a Chelsea fan. Sean, who's our Chelsea fan on the channel, says, what do you make of the appointment of Darren Fletcher coming in on the coaching staff, but also now as technical director?
Well, he's never been in that position before, and he's got a great opportunity. And I'm sure when Darren, his last club was at Stoke City, I'm sure when he left Stoke City, if you'd have offered him to move anywhere, or you'd have said to him, you can pick where you want to move to, I think the first thing he would have picked would have been Manchester United, would have been Old Trafford. Position he's moved into is a great position. You're mixing with the first team, you're mixing with the youngsters, you're part of both teams. Even though the manager's got his own team round about him, the first team manager that is, there's still room for the person like Darren who's in the position he's in, and I'm sure Ollie will be taking note of any advice that comes from Darren, because he's been a top player, he's been a top professional, and it's fantastic to have ex-players back at the club. A lot of ex-players back at Old Trafford on a match day, and it's great to see that the club doesn't forget the players from the past, because they're back there, they're in different positions at the club, in hospitality, some are in other positions, but at the end of the day, just being back there. I know when I left Manchester United, if you'd have said to me after 11 years there, what's your dream now? I would have said to be back at Old Trafford one day. I go back for MUTV, I'll be back there. I've been there 20 years. I work in hospitality, so I'm mixing with the sponsors there that actually look after the football club in terms of sponsoring them, and meet the present day players, go abroad with them when they go abroad. So I couldn't have asked for any more, and I'm sure Darren will agree that the position he's in now is fantastic for him.
And I think with Darren, he has a great mind for the game. But since he's retired, he's done a lot of interviews, and he's spoken kind of the way he speaks about the game, the way he looks at the game. He was obviously a great player, and Sir Alex had a lot of trust in Darren Fletcher, as a footballer. And looking the way he speaks since he's retired, I've no doubt that he has an eye for a good footballer, and hopefully he can succeed in this role. Because again, I think the DNA of Manchester United is something that's very important, and he'll know what's the DNA of a Manchester United player. So that's very. I hope to God, he does succeed in that role. Finally, just to wrap up, big game today against Roma, semi-final Europa League. As I touched on start of the show, it's our 5th semi-final in the last 2 years. How are you feeling coming into the game? I know I was telling you for the show, I was a big bucket of nerves today, but how are you feeling?
How am I feeling? I'm feeling a bit anxious because I've every reason to be a bit anxious, because over the last 12 months, 2 years, even possibly 3 years, there's been a little bit of an inconsistency about things. When you expect them to win, they don't win. When you're thinking they're not going to win today, they win. So it's a great opportunity. I'm hoping to go and grab that opportunity. Of no disrespect to Roma, but they're not one of those teams that year after year after year are recognised as one of the big clubs in Europe. They're not. That's why, a bit like ourselves, we're in this competition because we lost our way a little bit and didn't qualify in Champions League, and eventually end up in this competition. So, it'd be great for the manager. It would be that little bit of the CV that hopefully would be the start to a better CV. And it'd be great for the supporters, because none of us like going season after season and not seeing the team winning something. Trip to Wembley's always great, but that didn't happen. So I'm anxious, because the team and present day football gives me every reason to be anxious. It gives me, you take City last night, and they're losing 1-0. They look as if they can struggle a little bit. A guy on the radio said at half time, I was driving at the time, it could have been 4-0 at half time. And then I get home and I find out they've gone through and they've won 2-1. Doesn't make any sense. But I think that's the present day game. that we've got to live with, a little bit unpredictable. So I'm hoping our lads can produce the goods tonight and win. If they can win in a bit of style, that'll be great. If they win and it's not in any great style, that wouldn't bother me either, because there's a manager, there's supporters, there's ex-players, all needing to see the team winning and winning quickly.
Yeah, I think for me tonight, I think it's very important we don't concede an away goal. Obviously, we have to go to Rome next week on the back of probably a very physical game against Liverpool on Sunday.
Yeah.
So for me, I think it's very important we obviously keep a clean sheet today. Maybe score 1 or 2 goals. Starting the front foot, I think that's so important. Especially in the European time when it's a 2-legged affair. But I just hope we can get to that final and get that semi-final hoodoo over, because I think if we get past this, we'll beat either Arsenal or Villarreal. I do strongly believe that if we get past this, the confidence will be back up, and I think we're capable of beating either side. And look, I think during this pandemic, it's been kind of a tough time for all football fans across the world, and I think it gave me a big lift, because things are starting to open back up here in Ireland, and we're finally seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. And to say coming towards that time, Manchester United win a trophy, look, that kind of be the icing on the cake. Lou, just before I leave you go, my always favourite part of every show when we do a preview or an interview or anything like that is a score prediction for the game. Can I get your score prediction tonight for Manchester United versus Roma?
If it's a good night for us, and we've had lots of good nights, then I think we can build up a 2-0 lead for the second leg. If we play anything below our best and play below what some of the performances have been, then we could be in a bit of trouble. But at our best, I wouldn't see Roma as a problem. But I'm keeping my fingers crossed we are at our very best.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully we can go out there, get the result, and most importantly, put on a good performance and obviously get that confidence up, and let's move to Sunday then as well, because we have Liverpool on the weekend, and as everyone knows, it goes without saying, that's the biggest rivalry in English football. Yeah. Lou, thanks very much for coming on this afternoon. It's been an absolute pleasure to get your insight on your football career and all your involvement in football. I'm current Manchester United at the moment. It's been an absolute pleasure. Do really appreciate you coming on, and I hope you enjoy the game tonight, and best of luck with everything in the future.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
No problem, Lou. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Good man. Thank you.